Welcome to 1+1. I'm Tracy Holmes. My guest today is Lydia Williams, the goalkeeper for the national women's team, the Matildas. Being born in Western Australia to an Aboriginal father and a white American mother, Lydia was brought up straddling two worlds. She says it was sport that helped her find herself. Lydia Williams, thanks for joining us on 1+1.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
You know, it's really interesting when you look at somebody like you. You know, you're one of the world's best goalkeepers in what is truly a global game, so people can relate to that. This year you've also become a published author. You travel, you ply your trade around the world. This is what you do, but how would you describe who you are?
Gosh, I would say a lot of my identity does come from the game and what it's given me. But I have a pretty rich heritage of how my family grew up and how I grew up. So back in the day, I probably would have said that, you know, I'm an Aboriginal American, where right now, you know, I'm an athlete, I'm a national team player, but I'm more than that. So I think it's a bit intertwined of how I grew up, what I am now, and then what I'm going to be.
Well, let's go back to that, because the childhood you had was so completely unique. Not many other athletes or anybody has had that experience that you've had. So your mum comes out here from the USA as a missionary, meets your dad, an Indigenous man. You grow up in remote WA. I mean, that's all extraordinary. Just explain how you found yourself in that midst.
Gosh, it's pretty crazy. Mum actually wrote a book about it just because it was so unbelievable. But obviously she grew up in America. Her family is a military family, so she's actually had quite a hard upbringing herself. My dad's side of the family is part of the stolen generation. He was part of the first Indigenous people to go to school, to vote. So he's had it tough as well. He never had a job. My mum was a school teacher in Manhattan and then worked as a stockbroker, and then came over to Australia and met Dad, and they fell in love and had their honeymoon in a cave and had me. So growing up I was pretty open to every kind of experience. My dad loved Australia and loved Indigenous culture, so my childhood was very rich in Aboriginal life, how to hunt, how to cook, how to appreciate the land, going out in the desert and kicking an AFL ball with kids. And then my mum was very, make sure you go to school, do all your homework, you know, have a career, have some goals. And they were both so very proud of me. I mean, I'm an only child, so of course I was the apple of their eye. So yeah, it was a great childhood. It was definitely something really different, and now looking back at it, I appreciate everything that they've done for me.
Do you feel yourself that you are part American, part Indigenous Australian? I mean, explain that.
Yeah, every Christmas we would have pumpkin pie and some turkey, and then on the other side of the table there'll be kangaroo and some damper. So I definitely have a lot of that heritage in how I grew up. I would say now, not so much. You know, being away from outback Australia, it's, you know, I haven't had that opportunity to go back in the bush and experience kangaroo a lot and damper and living out under the stars and camping. So, you know, I do miss it, but it's a part of my life that I think I've moved on from. But it's definitely a part that has cemented itself really richly inside of me, and I have a lot of love for it.
Is it something you think you would go back to once your athletic career is over and you've got more time? Would you like to spend more time back in the outback, absorbing more of that Indigenous culture?
I would love to. I think, you know, going back in the desert and giving my time to Indigenous people, part of what my mum and dad did was go out and be missionaries in communities and help Aboriginal people that were, you know, struggling with, you know, either domestic violence or alcoholism or glue sniffing. If they didn't have any money, Dad would always, you know, give them $20. It didn't really bother either of them, as long as, you know, I was taken care of, but whatever they had left over, they would give to someone else. And I think that's a part that my dad had a nickname called Gooda, and which means everybody's brother out in tribal communities. And that's what he was. Everyone knew when he was coming, when our family was coming. I have an Indigenous tribal name that people know me as out in the desert. So
what's that?
Yulkari, which means heaven or sky. It's given to me by the people in Warracoona out in middle of Western Australia. So yeah, a lot of my heritage and how I grew up and what I believe in is in the Indigenous outback and with Aboriginals, but I've experienced so much now, and I have a career that I love and that I'm doing, but I definitely want to give back.
So we'll talk more about your career in a moment, but I'm really intrigued by this because it's something that I think most people on the outside wouldn't even think about and would never even be relevant in a conversation. But for you as an individual, when you're growing up and you've got one black parent and one white parent, that gives you unique challenges, doesn't it? Because you do question, where do I fit in this? Yeah,
it was hard growing up. You know, thinking back to it now, I haven't really experienced much racism since I've started playing football. But growing up, I definitely experienced it. I was called half caste a lot of my primary school life, which basically kind of means you don't really have an identity. You're not black, you're not white, you're not yellow, you don't really fit in. I was never really black enough to fit in with my people. I don't look dark. But also then, you know, all my Caucasian friends, I spent time out in the desert. We had 2 pet kangaroos. I spoke with the, you know, Aboriginal dialect, and that was never really accepted either. So my mum actually recalls this time that I sat down with her and I was just like, I just don't know who I am. I don't know where I belong. I don't know who my friends are. And that was really difficult for me, like growing up, and I had a lot of friends. I just never felt anywhere that I was really myself.
And did sport help you find that and resolve that?
Yeah, actually I was like very, very shy when I was younger, and I think that was part of it, that I didn't have that identity. And then as soon as I started playing football, it didn't matter. It didn't matter the colour of your skin, didn't matter who your parents were, didn't matter where you grew up, if you had an education. Didn't matter if you were shy, I was forced to talk being a goalkeeper. So I learnt a lot of who I am through sport, and I think a big part of who I am today has given me that identity through football.
So why goalkeeping? Because I've always said that, you know, the 2 toughest positions in sport, in anything actually, is being a goalkeeper and being an umpire or a referee of any sport, because you cannot win. Why would anyone choose to do that?
That's a good question. I kind of got stuck with it. Growing up in the desert, I learned how to kick and catch an AFL ball with the tribal kids. Played a little bit of football, played some basketball and athletics, and then once my mum got a job in Canberra, we all moved. And she basically said, you have no friends, let's join you up in some sporting teams. So I think there was no AFL in Canberra, of course, so it was basically, let's play basketball and football. The only position left is a goalkeeper. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, we'll rotate. I know how to kick and catch. Never rotated, saved a penalty in like our first competition, and then my coach was like, that's it, you're a goalkeeper. And it just kind of stuck ever since. I don't think I wanted to be, and I think I was pretty naive getting into the position, because there's been a lot of tears shed, but I could never see myself anything but.
And you've got to travel, you know, with this career as well. And I guess if we look at the Matildas as a team, they've just gone up and up and up, haven't they? The expectation was at this year's World Cup that you could have been in contention to win it. That didn't happen. Can you explain any of the circumstances around that? And when there is an expectation, and when a nation gets behind a team like that, do you feel that pressure? And what happens when you don't deliver on their expectations and your own?
You know, I think our team has been through a lot. We've been through, you know, coaching changes, strikes. You know, there's been a lot of personal things going on within the team, you know, with I guess, tragedies of like parents passing away and issues like that. So everyone's really close. We've kind of grown up together with young Matildas or in our club teams. So when, you know, something like a missed opportunity at a World Cup happens, we really have to rally around each other. And I think that's the beauty of our team, is that we have that resilience and we have that almost like family culture, that we have that expectation, but at the end of the day, we need each other. Because if you beat someone down in our team, you know, where are they going to go? We need every single player to get through and face the next challenge. And I think that's what we really learned. You know, it's hard having that expectation. I don't think we've ever had it before, so maybe it was a new experience. But in saying that, you know, we've bounced back and we're looking forward to the next challenges ahead. You really have to think about it as the team environment.
So you lost your long-term coach in just a few months before the World Cup. That sort of a situation, no matter who supports who, could really split and divide a team, couldn't it? You had a new coach coming in who'd never coached women's football before. Maybe explain that, because some people would go, well, what's the difference? Football's football. Well, how much of a learning curve was it for him, Ante Milicic?
Yeah, I think it was a big learning curve for him. I think, you know, the way that he puts it is that when he's been with the boys, they have their meal room in silence, they eat and then they leave. And for us, we're laughing. We hang around half an hour after we've eaten to just laugh with each other and be in a group setting. And he's like, it's the loudest I've ever heard the team is in the meal room. They just hang around. And another coach, former coach of mine, he always said that men need to play in order to belong, where females need to belong in order to play. And I think that really rings true. And, you know, understanding what's the difference between male and females is that we're a very group orientated and mentality, emotional kind of people, where, you know, men just want to get out there and get the job done. And I think that's, you know, been something that he's had to develop and learn, and it's been something that we've had to understand as well. And I think we have a good balance of that.
So at the Women's World Cup this year, we saw the USA team, you know, victorious again. They are an incredible force, aren't they? The personalities
Ridiculous.
In that team as well. So people like Megan Rapinoe with the pink hair and you know, the forceful signs all the time. She's got this following right around the globe. But they actually take a lot of their lead from the Australians, who might go about things a little bit differently, but you guys went on strike. You guys told your governing body, we're not going on tour until we get paid properly. You've just done this historic deal where the men's team, the Socceroos and the Matildas, are now equally sharing all revenue, which is an incredible deal.
Yeah, it's crazy.
In sport. Yeah. How big a deal is it? And what kind of resolve does it take to force those issues through? Because sports don't give up that kind of stuff easily.
Yeah, gosh, you know, full credit to the Socceroos and all the boys on the team that have supported us. You know, a lot of people may have thought that it was just purely us leading the charge and the PFA, but really the Socceroos were right behind it. And
so the PFA is the Player Association, which have been really such strong supporters of the women's game.
Yeah, they've done great things globally. I mean, they obviously saved Hakeem from his distress as well. So they've been right on the forefront for equality, for humanity, for justice. And to have the support from them and the Socceroos and the public as well, I think it's just really established a great stepping stone for us, not only for football, but sport in general. And I think that is really exciting that this country and this sport has really kind of stepped up and taken notice. And, you know, it's definitely created a lot of headlines around the world, which we're happy about. But, you know, also now we have to really focus on performing when it comes down to it.
So you mentioned Hakeem there. That's the story of the refugee that was detained after a misleading red alert went out, and he was detained in Thailand. He went there for his honeymoon. And Craig Foster, a former captain of the Socceroos team, was adamant in getting other players from around the world to fight on his behalf. When you see that kind of stuff and you talk about justice and human rights, are we moving into a new era in sport where athletes are taking much more of a stance and a vocal role in where they want to see sport heading, and that sport needs to stand for much more than just winning or losing a game?
Yeah, I think so. It's happening worldwide. I mean, you've seen when, I guess, teams in America have been invited to the White House recently and they refuse to go.
And so mostly these are teams like LeBron James in the NBA, who's just like, not going to go there.
Yeah.
You've got Colin Kaepernick in American football taking a knee and starting a worldwide trend and saga for himself. He's been unemployed since. Megan Rapinoe, as we said. Is it different, do you think, the way the Americans approach it? They seem to be a lot more vocal and upfront, and you guys seem to be doing the work as well, but in an almost behind the scenes way sometimes.
Yeah, I think for us it's, you know, our sport and the opportunities we've had is from, you know, the sport, from our fans, from our families, from who we are and identify as. So I think, you know, first and foremost, we don't want to bring the sport down in any way. We want to keep on building it. So I think for us to just go out there and say something, it's never done in a manner that it's not been discussed. For instance, the strike that we had in 2015, we were calling each other, wondering, what do you want to do? What's happening? Everyone's phone was blowing up for weeks, just trying to figure out what the next thing is. We're talking to the Players Association. And then the decision to have the strike was not made out of haste. It was calculated. It was, you know, a group decision. And, you know, obviously that's, you know, out of all of that, we finally, you know, got our CBA pulled through, and, you know, now there's another CBA that's even better. So a lot of what we've done is very, I guess, team orientated. It's never done just out of haste and to get the big bangs. It's always been a little bit more calculated and under the table moving forward to see what we actually can and can't say.
Tell me about the experience you've had of playing professionally in the Women's National League in the USA, and what you learnt from that experience, and just American life.
Gosh, American life. I love Australia. That's probably like the biggest thing out of it, is that there's no place like home. I loved being in America. I've learnt so much. They're so passionate about sport, and it's very much a results-driven area. If you don't win, you may be out of a job, which, you know, I think in Australia we like to nurture each other and create longevity. We don't have a bigger playing pool as the Americans do in all sports, so we kind of have to nurture each other. A lot of people come back and they're pretty exhausted from America because you have to perform every day, where here you kind of can get away sometimes, maybe just having an off day or just taking it easy. But over there, people play injured because they don't know if it will be their last game.
Let's talk a little bit about injury, because you're probably not going to be anywhere near as injured as anybody on the field than in your position as a goalkeeper. What have you gone through in your career?
I've gone through 2 ACL reconstructions. I've gone through...
Explain that for people that are non-sporty. Yeah. What's an ACL?
Basically the ligament that kind of holds your knee together. Both times it kind of snapped, so there was no stability in my knee. So basically when you walk, it kind of shifts. So running is completely out of the question. So I've had to get that repaired twice. Broken my wrist before, which has been during training. Was actually training with some boys and kept saving the ball, so one got let loose a little bit harder and broke my wrist, so I had to get a surgery on that. Had some ankle stuff that recently done, just a clean out. My knee again has had a clean out. There's been quite a few, a lot of injections.
Are you surprised that there's not more? I mean, given the way you've got to throw yourself, you know, in front of that goal. I mean, it's really amazing, and you've got to do that week in, week out for years on end.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty surprised.
I'll come back to why.
I know, me too.
You answered that before.
Me too, but I think I've always been a pretty tough kid. I've always, you know, ran out barefoot in the desert and kind of thrown myself around with the bush kids. So For me, it's just been, I've just always done it. You know, I guess I'll retire when my body has had it.
Well, talking about that, Australia is in the middle now of a bid for the 2023 Women's World Cup. Are you going to be around, should we win that, to play in the team? Because 4 years is a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, I've thought about it quite a number of times. This is my 15th year of playing with the national team, so it's been a long road.
4 World Cups in that.
Yeah, so you know what, if my body can make it through it, I'd love to be a part of it. Really, it's kind of, I guess, going to be up to whoever the coach is at the time, how I'm performing, if I'm healthy. So really, I'm kind of going on season by season now and just seeing, you know, what is best for me. I wouldn't say no, but, you know, now it's really about looking after my body and kind of focusing on me.
And that's the difficult thing too, because it pretty much is in someone else's hands, isn't it? And that's the life of an athlete. What happens when, I'm not saying you're in that position at the moment, but I know that, you know, people do start to think, okay, when I leave this, and this is something I've been doing since I was that big, and it's something that is totally consuming. It consumes every part of your life, what you eat, when you sleep, when you get up to train, how you travel. What happens when that finishes?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, lucky for us with the Players Association, they have a lot of post-career and, you know, retirement transition programs that they are offering and a lot of help. But it's difficult. I mean, it's every sport. Every sport people go through, you know, a period where they don't know what to do. A couple of days ago, I was doing a photo shoot and I was just waiting around for, you know, my turn, and they were like, you know, the people looked around like, why are you just waiting? I'm like, it's my turn, I'm just waiting. That's what the sheet said, so I'm just waiting. And they're like, oh, normally other people would like walk out, get a coffee, maybe go to the bathroom, and I'm like, oh, I've just been like regimented my whole life. I have a schedule, so I'm gonna wait until, you know, that's over, and then after that's done, then I'm kind of free to do whatever. And they're like, oh, it's so different how sport people work. And I never really understood that until that comment. And it's true, we kind of live day to day on what the schedule says. When are you going to wake up to eat to be fueled enough for training? And then you have time to, when are you going to eat your lunch so you can recover? Do you do an ice bath? Do you get a massage? So when you're done, you're kind of left to your own devices, and that's really scary.
Have you given much thought to what you might like to do?
You know, I obviously written a book, which is, you know, hoping that it inspires a lot of kids out there, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, just Australians in general. So I'd love to just inspire people. I'd love to go out, you know, and somehow give my experiences that I've had an opportunity for another kid to feel like they can reach for the stars. It doesn't matter who they are or their background. They actually have an opportunity to achieve something. So I think for me, there'll be opportunities. I don't really know what yet, but I definitely want to give back.
I want to take you back to the year 2000, just quickly, because I think that was a really defining moment in your life, wasn't it? I guess, what were you, about 12 at the time of the Sydney Olympics? And you saw Kathy Freeman both light the flame and run that incredible 400 metres.
Crazy.
What did that do inside that 12-year-old mind?
Well, I remember my parents bought me a VHS of, I think it was the Commonwealth Games, and she ran in that as well. And I remember like rewinding it and watching it and being like, oh, that's so cool. And then watching live the Olympics and seeing her light the flame, coming into the stadium and light the flame, I was like, that is like incredible. And then finally, when she was running the 400 meters final and won it, and then had both flags of Australian and the Aboriginal flag, for me, that was just like a light bulb moment. That was like, I want to do that. That's just like so incredible. She was so like soft-spoken, was never cocky about it, almost like she had no idea that she just broke, you know, record, and just like created history for all of Australia to talk about for years to come. And just seeing like how humble she was and how proud she was to be Aboriginal and Australian, that did it for me. I was like, I want to do something of that nature, whatever sport it might be.
And so when you look at the conversations that are taking place in Australia now, you know, whether it's constitutional recognition or the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and where society is going with that, and the place that Cathy Freeman occupied, the place that Adam Goodes occupies, do you see yourself in that kind of a position as well, that you can help educate, that you can influence people, that you can try and turn things around for the next generation of kids, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous?
Yeah, I would love to. I think it's a part of, you know, Australia that's missing. It's missing its history and its heritage. I've been lucky enough to have grown up with my dad, and everything that he taught me. I remember we went to Uluru and he was like, "You're not climbing it." I was like, "Why? All these other people are climbing it." He was like, "We don't, no, you don't do this. This is not, we're not doing it. We'll take a photo, you have a look at it, and then we're going." And I never knew the significance as a kid until he started explaining it. And even now, I'm talking to some of, you know, my friends, I just don't understand why it's being closed. And it's just like, no, it's so sacred. It's so special to who Australia is. And, you know, if I can help in some way in football, in education, in whatever it might be, I would love to. That's, you know, something that really speaks loudly to me, and, you know, I want to leave a legacy.
And do you think in Australia we're on the verge of a new chapter?
I think so.
A chapter of greater understanding, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so. I just, the amount of Indigenous people that have such creative outlets now, not just, you know, music, not just sport, not just arts or literature. It's now like social media, it's inventing, it's clothing, it's building,
science,
politics. It's crazy, and I think it's exciting to see so many more Indigenous people being put out there and being like, yeah, I can do this. You can do it too.
Lydia Williams, been great to talk to you on 1+1. Thank you.
Thank you.